Good morning, dear friend. As I sit here watching the first light break through my kitchen window, I am reminded that every sunrise carries with it the promise of something new. There is something sacred about these quiet moments, before the world wakes up, when possibility feels as fresh as the morning air. The prophet Isaiah reminds us in chapter 43, verse 19, "Behold, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs forth, do you not perceive it?" Today is not just another day on your calendar. It is an invitation from heaven itself to step into the new thing God has been preparing for you. Perhaps you are standing at the crossroads of change this morning. Maybe you sense that a chapter of your life is ending, and you are wondering what comes next. I want you to imagine just for a moment, stepping into possibilities you have never seen before. Picture doors opening that you did not even know existed. Before we dive into this journey together, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe so we can pray together this morning. Because today, change is not just possible, it is already on its way. Let me tell you about Sarah, a woman who thought her world had ended when it was actually just beginning. At 52 years old, Sarah had been working as an accountant for the same firm for 15 years. Every morning she would drive the same route, sit at the same desk, crunch the same numbers. It was safe, predictable, and slowly killing her spirit. Then one Friday afternoon in March, her supervisor called her into the conference room. Budget cuts, they said. Last hired, first fired, they explained. Sarah cleaned out her desk that day, feeling like someone had pulled the rug from underneath her entire existence. At 52, who was going to hire her? How would she pay her mortgage? What was she supposed to do now? But here is what Sarah could not see in that moment of devastation. God was not ending her story. He was editing it. 6 months later, Sarah opened the doors to Sarah's Sweet Escape, a small bakery that had been nothing more than a distant dream since her 20s. The same hands that had calculated other people's profits were now kneading dough at 4 in the morning, and her heart had never felt more alive. This is the God we serve, friends. The God of new beginnings does not just close doors randomly. He closes them strategically, redirecting us toward the plans He has been preparing all along. In Jeremiah 29, verse 11, God declares, "For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, to give you hope and a future." Notice that He does not say, "I am making plans for you." He says, "I know the plans I have for you." These plans already exist. They are detailed, specific, and designed perfectly for who you are and who you are becoming. Your new beginning is not God scrambling to figure out what to do with your life. It is God revealing what He has already prepared. 2 Corinthians 5:17 tells us, "Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come. The old has gone. The new is here." When God speaks of new creation, He is not talking about a slight improvement or a minor adjustment. He is talking about complete transformation. You are not just getting a do-over. You are being reborn into possibilities that did not exist before. Here is what I have learned about God's new beginnings. They do not erase your past. They redeem it. Every experience, every failure, every disappointment becomes raw material for something beautiful. The God who makes all things new does not waste anything. He is the master of turning endings into doorways, setbacks into setups, and closed chapters into new stories. Think about the Red Sea moment in your own life. Maybe you are standing there right now with the impossibility of your situation behind you and the unknown stretching out in front of you. The Israelites stood at that same place, trapped between Pharaoh's army and deep water. But God specializes in making ways where there seems to be no way. He is the God who opens seas and makes rivers in the desert. Every closed door in your life has been His protection. Every delayed answer has been His preparation. Every no you have received has been steering you toward His yes. Your new beginning is not just starting today. It has been in development in the heart of God long before you even realized you needed one. But let me be honest with you this morning. New beginnings are not easy, and anyone who tells you they are has never really had to start over. Let me introduce you to James, a 38-year-old father who knows this truth intimately. James never imagined he would be the kind of man who moved back in with his mother. After 12 years of marriage, he thought he had life figured out. He had a house in the suburbs, a decent job in sales, 2 beautiful kids who spent their weekends at soccer games and birthday parties. Then one Tuesday evening, his wife sat him down at their kitchen table and said 4 words that changed everything: "I want a divorce." The next 6 months became a blur of lawyers' custody arrangements and sleepless nights. James found himself packing his belongings into boxes, wondering how a man his age could feel so much like a failure. Moving back into his childhood bedroom, sleeping in the same twin bed he had as a teenager, he would lie awake asking himself the same question over and over: how do I start my life over at 38? The financial reality hit him like a freight train. Child support, his own rent that he could not afford, splitting everything down the middle when there had barely been enough for one household to begin with. Some nights, James would sit in his car in the parking lot of his old house, watching through the windows as his ex-wife helped their children with homework, feeling like a stranger looking into someone else's life. This is the reality of change that nobody talks about in motivational posts on social media. Change comes with grief. Even when the change is ultimately good for us, we mourn what we are leaving behind. We grieve the familiar, the predictable, the sense of security that comes from knowing what to expect each day. There is a specific weight that comes with starting over in middle age. Society tells us that by 35, by 40, by 50, we should have it all figured out. We should be established, secure, successful. When life forces us to begin again, we carry not just the practical challenges of rebuilding, but the emotional burden of feeling like we have somehow failed at being adults. James would scroll through social media and see his high school classmates celebrating anniversaries, posting pictures of family vacations, buying bigger houses. Meanwhile, he was learning how to cook for one person and trying to figure out how to use a washing machine that belonged to his 70-year-old mother. But perhaps the heaviest burden was the spiritual wrestling that came in the dark hours of the night. "God, where were you when my marriage was falling apart?" he would whisper into his pillow. "If you really have plans for me, why does it feel like my life is completely off the rails? Why do your promises feel so far away when I need them most?" This is where real faith gets tested. Not in the comfortable moments when everything is going according to plan, but in the seasons when we are holding on to God's promises with white knuckles, while our circumstances scream the opposite. James found himself caught in the tension between what he believed about God's goodness and what he was experiencing in his daily reality. Fear became his constant companion. Fear of dating again. How do you trust someone new when trust has been shattered? Fear of financial instability. What if he never got back on his feet? Fear of his children seeing him as a failure. What kind of example was he setting for them? Fear of being alone. What if this was just how his life was going to be from now on? The comparison trap was relentless. Everyone else seemed to have their lives together, while he felt like he was drowning in uncertainty. Friends would offer well-meaning advice about getting back out there and moving on, but they did not understand the complexity of untangling a life that had been built with someone else. These are the valleys that we walk through on the way to new beginnings. God does not promise that change will be comfortable. He promises that He will be with us in the discomfort. He does not promise that starting over will be easy. He promises that He will give us strength for each step of the journey. Let me tell you about Maria, because her story will help you understand why sometimes we have to reach the end of our own strength before we can discover God's. Maria was a 34-year-old woman who had built her entire identity around taking care of others and controlling outcomes. When her mother was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, Maria made the decision to close the small family restaurant they had run together for 8 years. She moved back into her childhood home to become a full-time caregiver, convinced that if she just managed every detail perfectly, if she researched every treatment option, if she stayed awake around the clock, monitoring every symptom, somehow she could control the outcome. For 14 months, Maria lived in a world where her own needs disappeared. She scheduled doctor appointments, managed medications, researched clinical trials, and held her mother's hand through chemotherapy sessions that left them both exhausted. She told herself that this sacrifice would be worth it when her mother recovered. But cancer had its own timeline, and all of Maria's efforts could not change the inevitable. After the funeral, Maria found herself standing in the empty restaurant that had been closed for over a year. The health department permits had expired. Some of the equipment needed repairs she could not afford. The regular customers had found other places to eat. She had exactly $3,000 in her savings account and a mountain of medical bills that insurance had not covered. This is where life becomes like standing at the edge of a cliff in the middle of a storm. Every direction you look, you see obstacles that seem impossible to overcome. Maria described it to me once as feeling like she was standing at the base of Mount Everest, being asked to climb to the summit with nothing but flip-flops and a bottle of water. Reopening the restaurant would require permits, repairs, new inventory marketing to win back customers, and money she did not have. But finding a regular job felt like abandoning everything her mother had worked to build. Either choice felt like stepping off a cliff into an abyss of uncertainty. This is the moment when we realize that our need to control everything is actually the thing that is controlling us. Maria had spent so many months trying to manage every detail of her mother's illness that she had forgotten how to trust anything she could not manipulate. Now she was facing decisions where no amount of planning or research could guarantee the outcome. The anxiety was suffocating. She would wake up at 3 a.m. with her heart racing, her mind spinning through worst-case scenarios. What if she failed? What if she lost the restaurant permanently? What if she could not pay the mortgage on her mother's house? What if? During the day, she would drive around the city looking at help wanted signs and trying to imagine herself working behind someone else's counter, following someone else's rules, building someone else's dream. But at night, she would walk through the empty restaurant, running her hands along the tables where families had celebrated birthdays and anniversaries, remembering the sound of her mother's laugh echoing from the kitchen. The weight of having to choose the right path was crushing her. She felt like one wrong decision would dishonor her mother's memory, waste her sacrifice of the last 14 months, and condemn her to a life of regret. But the paralysis of trying to make the perfect choice was keeping her from making any choice at all. Friends and family members offered conflicting advice. Take the safe route. Get a steady job with benefits. Follow your heart. Keep the family legacy alive. Give yourself time to grieve before making any major decisions. Do not wait too long, or the opportunity will be gone forever. Everyone had an opinion, but none of them had to live with the consequences. This is the place where we discover that our human strength has limits. Maria was trying to carry a burden that was never meant to be carried alone. She was trying to see around corners that only God could see around. She was trying to control outcomes that were only controllable by the one who holds the future in his hands. Standing in that empty restaurant one evening, as the sun was setting through the front windows, Maria finally understood what it meant to reach the end of herself. She had run out of plans, out of energy, and out of answers. It was in that moment of complete helplessness that she was finally ready to discover what God's strength could do through her weakness. The turning point for Maria came on a Tuesday morning in October, when she found herself face down on the kitchen floor of the empty restaurant. Not because she had fallen, but because she had finally fallen to her knees in complete surrender. "Jehovah Ra, my shepherd," she whispered into the silence. "I admit that I have been trying to lead my own way for too long. I do not know which direction to go, but you do. I trust you to guide me." This was not a prayer of defeat. This was a prayer of partnership. Maria was not giving up. She was giving over. There is a significant difference between the two. Giving up is quitting in despair. Giving over is releasing control to someone who can handle what you cannot. Let me share with you the prayer that changed everything for her, because maybe it is the prayer you need to pray this morning. Jehovah Jireh, my provider, I trust that you see what I need before I even ask. You know about the medical bills, the repair costs, the permits, the customers I need to win back. You see the resources. I do not see the connections. I have not made the opportunities that have not yet revealed themselves. Jehovah Shalom, my peace. Calm the storm in my mind that keeps me awake at night. Replace my anxiety with your peace that surpasses understanding. Help me to rest in your timing instead of being tormented by my own timeline. Jehovah Nissi, my banner of victory, raise your flag over my future. Declare victory over my situation, even when I cannot see how victory is possible. Remind me that you are fighting battles on my behalf that I do not even know about. Lord, I place back into your hands my fears about the future. I have been trying to figure out every detail before taking the first step, but you are asking me to trust you, one step at a time. I give you my need to know the end of the story before I am willing to start the next chapter. I surrender my desperate desire for security. I have been looking for guarantees in a world where the only guarantee is your faithfulness. I choose to find my security in your promises instead of in my circumstances. I give you my broken dreams. The dream of growing old with my mother. The dream of expanding our restaurant together. The dream of the life I had planned. I trust you to create something beautiful from these ashes, something I cannot even imagine right now. But here is what Maria discovered that morning. Surrender is not passive. It is the most active thing you can do. When you surrender to God, you are not becoming a victim of circumstances. You are becoming a partner with the Creator of the universe. Faith without works is dead, and works without faith is exhausting. But faith combined with action becomes the most powerful force in the universe. Maria got up off that kitchen floor and took the first step without being able to see the second step. She applied for the permits to reopen the restaurant. She did not have all the money she needed. She did not have a complete business plan. She did not have guarantees that customers would return. But she had something more valuable than any of those things. She had partnership with the God who makes ways where there seems to be no way. David the veteran I mentioned earlier had his own moment of surrender in the garage of his mother's house at 2 a.m. He had been carrying the weight of his anxiety, his unemployment, his sense of failure for so long that his shoulders were permanently hunched forward, like he was bracing for the next blow. God, I cannot do this anymore, he said out loud to the empty garage. I cannot fix my mind. I cannot fix my circumstances. I cannot even fix myself. You take it, all of it. If you want to do something with this mess I have made, it is yours. David enrolled in evening classes to become a counselor, not because he had a detailed career plan, but because surrender had taught him that his pain could become his purpose. Every small step he took was an act of faith, a declaration that he trusted God to connect dots he could not yet see. This is what active faith looks like. It is taking the next right step without demanding to see the whole staircase. It is saying yes to God's invitation, even when you cannot see the destination. It is moving forward in partnership with heaven, knowing that God's part is to provide what you cannot provide for yourself, and your part is to do what you can do with what you have been given. 6 months after Maria's surrender in that empty restaurant, something beautiful began to unfold. But it did not happen the way anyone would have expected, and that is exactly the point. God's new beginnings rarely look like our original plans, but they always exceed our original expectations. The peace that had flooded Maria's heart after her prayer of surrender became the foundation for everything that followed. Instead of waking up with that familiar knot of anxiety in her stomach, she began waking up with quiet expectation. Not expectation for specific outcomes, but expectation that God was working behind the scenes in ways she could not see. Her stress about money transformed into daily gratitude for provision. When a customer from the old days randomly stopped by and left a $100 tip, just because Maria saw God's hand. When the equipment repairman offered to fix her grill in exchange for catering his daughter's quinceañera, she saw divine connection. What had once looked like impossible obstacles now looked like opportunities for God to show his creativity. Maria's sleep improved dramatically because she had finally transferred the responsibility for her future from her own shoulders to someone who never sleeps. Her conversations with friends changed from complaints about her situation to testimonies of how God was showing up in small daily miracles. But the transformation that mattered most was happening in David's life. After 8 months of counseling classes and inner healing work, David received a phone call that changed everything. The local Veterans Center needed someone to teach a support group for combat veterans struggling with PTSD and unemployment. The salary was not impressive by corporate standards. It was about 40% of what David had been making in his previous job. But something had shifted in his understanding of prosperity. True wealth, he realized, was not just having money in the bank. It was having peace in his heart, purpose in his days, and the knowledge that his pain was being transformed into healing for others. David's first day teaching at the Veterans Center was terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. Looking into the faces of 12 men who were carrying the same invisible wounds he had carried, he understood why God had allowed him to walk through his own dark valley. What Satan had intended to destroy him, God was now using to restore others. The breakthrough that surprised everyone, including David himself, was how naturally the teaching came to him. Years of battling his own anxiety had given him insights that no textbook could provide. His ability to speak hope into hopeless situations came from having found hope in his own hopelessness. Meanwhile, unexpected doors were opening for everyone who had chosen to trust God's timing instead of forcing their own. Sarah's bakery had become much more than a business. It had become a gathering place for single mothers in the community who needed a safe space to connect and encourage each other. What started as simple baking classes evolved into catering opportunities for small events. A partnership with the local coffee shop to supply their pastries brought steady income and new customers. Sarah's story of starting over at 52 inspired a local newspaper to feature her business, which led to a 40% increase in orders within 3 months. Maria's restaurant reopened with half the seating capacity it had before, but twice the heart. The customers who returned brought friends. The community rallied around the story of a daughter honoring her mother's legacy. Orders increased not just because of the food, but because people wanted to be part of something meaningful. But perhaps the most beautiful breakthrough was in James's life. At the single-parent support group that David had recommended, James met Rebecca, a woman who understood his journey because she was walking a similar path. Their relationship was not built on desperation or the need to fix each other, but on mutual respect and shared experience. Together, they started a blog about co-parenting with grace, offering practical advice and emotional support to other divorced parents. Within a year, their blog was sponsored by a family counseling organization, providing unexpected income and a platform to help thousands of other families navigate the challenges of restructuring after divorce. Here is what none of them could have seen in their darkest moments. The delays they had experienced were not rejections. They were preparations. Every season of waiting had been strengthening them for what was coming. David needed to process his own trauma before he could help others heal from theirs. Maria needed to grieve her losses completely before she could celebrate new life. James needed to become whole as an individual before he could build something healthy with someone else. Sarah needed the corporate experience and life wisdom that only came with age before she could successfully run her own business. This is how divine timing works. What looks like God being late is actually God being precise. He does not waste our waiting seasons. He uses them to develop in us what we will need for what He is preparing. Friend, wherever you are in your journey toward new beginnings, this morning, I want you to understand something profound. Every obstacle that stands in your way will bow to the name of Jesus. Every closed door that has frustrated you was God's redirection towards something better than you originally imagined. Every season of waiting you have endured has been preparation for the acceleration that is coming. Your new beginning is not just starting today. It is already in motion. The same God who made rivers flow through the desert is making ways where you see none. What looks like an ending in your life right now is actually a launching pad for your next level. Here is what I have learned after walking with people through hundreds of new beginnings. You do not need to see the whole path, just the next step. God is not asking you to have a 5-year plan. He is asking you to have 5 minutes of faith. You do not need to have all the answers before you begin. You just need willingness to trust the one who has all the answers. You do not need perfect conditions to start over. Perfect conditions do not exist. What you need is persistent faith that God is working all things together for your good. Your breakthrough may not look exactly like you imagined it would. It may be better. It may be different. But it will be exactly what you need for the person you are becoming and the purpose you are designed to fulfill. The God of new beginnings is writing your story right now, and his endings are always good. Not always easy, but always good. Not always fast, but always right on time. Not always what we expect, but always what we need. Maybe you are in the middle of a career transition and wondering if you are too old to start over. You are not too old. You are exactly the right age to become who God created you to be. Maybe you are facing the end of a relationship and wondering if you will ever find love again. Your heart is not broken beyond repair. It is being prepared for a love that is healthier than what you lost. Maybe you are dealing with health challenges that have forced you to reimagine your entire future. Your body may be changing, but your purpose is not diminishing. God has assignments for you that can only be fulfilled by someone who has walked through what you are walking through. Maybe you are staring at financial difficulties that feel overwhelming. Your bank account does not determine your worth or your future. The same God who fed 5,000 people with a little boy's lunch is able to multiply what you have and provide what you need. In the comments below, I want you to tell me what new beginning you are believing God for. Are you stepping out in business relationships, career health journey, ministry, creative endeavors? Let this be your moment of declaration. When you speak your faith out loud, you activate the power of agreement with heaven. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell because tomorrow we are going to pray specifically for breakthrough in finances, and I do not want you to miss it. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that their new chapter is starting today. Tag them. Send them the link. Let them know that someone is praying for their breakthrough. Remember, you are not alone in this journey. We are praying together, believing together, and stepping into new beginnings together. God has not brought you this far to leave you now. Your story is not over. The best chapters are still being written. Until tomorrow, keep your eyes on Jesus, your heart open to possibilities, and your feet ready to walk into the fresh opportunities He is opening for you. Thank you for letting me pray with you this morning. I am believing with you for the new beginning that has your name on it. Your breakthrough is closer than you think. Your new beginning starts now.